Renata Richter stood in her quiet living room, phone in hand, ready to call her son Max. She had spent the whole morning rehearsing how to ask about his wedding date without sounding too eager. Before she could dial, Lena, her daughter-in-law, looked her straight in the eye and smiled, a slow, icy smile that curled like frost. "Oh, we already got married yesterday," Lena said casually, as if announcing the weather. "We only invited special people." The words hit Renata like a bucket of ice water. Special people. She stood frozen, phone slipping slightly in her trembling fingers. Her heart pounded in her ears as she stared at Lena lounging on the sofa Renata had bought for them. Max kept his gaze fixed on the floor, silent and tense. Renata's eyes drifted toward the closet down the hall. Inside hung the pale pink dress she had chosen for Max's wedding day, along with the soft cream shoes she had saved for months to buy. She had imagined smiling in photographs, standing proudly beside her only son. That dress now felt like a cruel joke, a costume for a play she'd never been invited to. "You already got married?" she asked, voice breaking. Max finally muttered, "It was small, Mom. Just the two of us and the witnesses." His tone sounded rehearsed, brittle. Renata blinked back tears as Lena casually scrolled through her phone, perfectly comfortable in the home she had helped furnish but would never truly belong to. Renata had spent weeks preparing for that day, scrubbing the house from top to bottom, putting aside $1,000 as a wedding gift, and calling her sister Diana in Chicago to share her excitement. She had imagined hosting them for cake afterward, laughing, maybe even dancing a little. Instead, she stood in the same spotless room, invisible in her own life. "I saw the photos," she whispered. Max's head jerked up. "What photos?" "On social media," Renata said, her voice trembling. "Lena's parents, her siblings, the champagne. I saw everything." Lena smirked faintly, as if caught but unbothered. Renata's chest tightened with each memory. She had given Lena $800 last month for personal expenses, not knowing it would pay for the white dress she now saw sparkling in those photos. "You lied to me," Renata said, her tone low but sharp. Max opened his mouth, then closed it, lips pale. "It was an intimate thing," he muttered again. "We didn't want a big fuss." Renata stared at him, barely recognizing the boy who once brought her wildflowers from the park. Lena crossed her legs, still scrolling, as though Renata's heartbreak were background noise. That night, Renata sat on her bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. Her chest hurt, as if a heavy stone pressed on it. She tried to recall when Max stopped seeing her as his mother and started seeing her as a wallet. She remembered the Christmases she had paid for, the birthdays, the groceries, the rent, 3 long years of making sure they never went without. And in return, she had been erased from the happiest day of his life. A silent tear slid down her cheek, and then another. They weren't tears of sorrow. They were hot, stinging tears of anger. 7 days passed with no apology. Then the phone rang. Renata saw Lena's name flash on the screen. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Renata," Lena's voice cracked, urgent now. "The rent is overdue. The landlord says if we don't pay this week, we'll be evicted. You forgot to make the transfer." Renata sat silently, stunned by the audacity. "Did I?" she asked softly. "Yes, please," Lena rushed on. "We're counting on you." Renata's lips curled into a faint smile no one could see. The same woman who had called her unworthy of being special was now begging. "I warned you," Renata said quietly, "that I only help special people." There was a long pause, then a soft gasp from Lena. "Renata, I don't understand," she stammered. "You've always treated us like your own children. You're like a second mom to me." Lies, Renata thought. So many lies wrapped in sugar. The same sugary tone Lena had used to ask for money for her dress, the honeymoon, the rings. "You made me invisible," Renata whispered. "Now you get to see what invisible feels like." She ended the call and placed the phone down with shaking hands. The house was so quiet afterward that she could hear her own heartbeat. Renata sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she had counted bills for their rent, where she had cried silently while writing checks. She opened her drawer and pulled out her bank statements. The numbers stared back like a cruel mirror, $500 a month for rent, $200 for groceries, $800 for emergencies, $1,200 for furniture. It all added up like stones on her chest. She grabbed a pen and began adding it carefully, methodically, as if tallying evidence in a courtroom. $33,400. That was the sum of her generosity. Renata dropped the pen and stared at the number. $33,400 she had bled from her savings, her pension, and her late husband's inheritance. Money meant for her quiet, golden years, not for two adults who couldn't even pretend to respect her. She pressed her palms to her eyes and let the tears fall, not of grief this time, but of fury. She had bought their comfort at the cost of her dignity, and they had thanked her by erasing her. The next morning, Renata woke up different. She rose from bed slowly, deliberately, like a soldier preparing for battle. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The same gray-streaked hair, the same weary eyes, but something new gleamed behind them, a flint of resolve. She made her morning coffee without checking her phone, without waiting for an apology that would never come. She sat at the table, straight-backed, and whispered to the empty room, "No more." The word felt strange on her tongue, powerful and clean. For the first time in years, Renata chose herself first. Renata stayed seated at her kitchen table long after her coffee turned cold. The morning sun crawled across the tiles as she sifted through receipts, bank statements, and old check stubs. For years, this table had been the command center of her silent sacrifices. Now, it was the war room of her awakening. She whispered each figure under her breath, like a confession. Rent, groceries, gifts, car loan. Every number was a piece of her soul she had traded for scraps of affection. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "I paid for their lives," she murmured, "and they charged me my dignity." By late morning, her phone had rung 7 times. Max, Lena, Max again. She let it vibrate on the counter until it finally stopped. The sound no longer jolted her. It only reminded her how quickly they noticed when the money stopped flowing. She took a slow breath and stood, her knees stiff but steady. "Enough," she said aloud to the quiet kitchen. She pulled on her coat, slipped her bank folder into her purse, and locked the front door behind her. For once, she wasn't heading to the bank to save them. She was going to save herself. At the corner, she paused by the small park where she used to bring Max as a boy. She could still see him there, 5 years old, giggling on the swings, calling, "Push me higher, Mom." Her throat tightened. "What happened to that boy?" she whispered. She stared at the empty swings for a long moment, then squared her shoulders and walked on. The wind carried the faint sound of children's laughter from the other end of the park, but it no longer belonged to her world. Her world had changed overnight. The bank branch came into view, neat and glassy under the afternoon sun. Rough the door, she spotted Mr. Klein, the branch manager who had processed every one of her transfers to Max and Lena. He smiled and waved, as if greeting an old friend. Renata forced a small smile and walked straight into his office. "Mr. Klein," she said, setting her folder on his desk, "I need to cancel all automatic transfers to my son's account." His eyebrows rose. "All of them?" "Every single one," she replied firmly. "As of today." Mr. Klein studied her face. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Richter?" he asked gently. "For 3 years those payments have been as regular as sunrise." Renata met his gaze. "That's the problem. They became automatic, like breathing, like blinking. I forgot to ask if I even wanted to." He nodded slowly, then began typing. Her phone buzzed again. "Max." She turned it face down on the desk. "Also," she added, "I want to block all external access to my accounts. Only my signature, no exceptions." Something like pride flickered in Mr. Klein's eyes. While he processed the cancellations, her phone rang 5 more times. "Max, Lena." Lena again. It felt almost comical, like seagulls screaming when someone took away their breadcrumbs. She turned the phone off completely. The sudden silence was like stepping into a warm bath. Mr. Klein handed her a stack of papers. "Here you go, Mrs. Richter. Everything is secure now." Then, more softly, "I hope no one is pressuring you into this." His concern was more genuine than anything she'd heard from her son in years. "No," she said. "I've just stopped pressuring myself." Walking home, Renata felt strangely light. The air seemed sharper, cleaner, as though the city itself had shifted colors. For the first time in years, her money belonged only to her. She passed the travel agency on Main Street and caught herself pausing at the window. A poster showed the Amalfi Coast, cobalt seas, lemon trees clinging to cliffs. She smiled faintly. Maybe one day. Not yet, but one day. For now, freedom was enough. She turned toward home with her steps firmer, her back straighter than it had been in years. 3 cars were parked in front of her house when she returned. Max's old sedan, Lena's little silver hatchback, and a third car she didn't recognize, a sleek gray vehicle with tinted windows. Renata's stomach tightened. Through the curtains, she saw movement inside. Her heartbeat quickened. They had keys. She had given them keys once, trusting they would care for her someday. She unlocked the front door slowly, like someone entering enemy territory. The smell of her cinnamon candles greeted her, but so did raised voices. She inhaled deeply. It was time. Renata stepped inside and froze. Max sat on her sofa with his head in his hands. Lena was pacing like a caged fox. At her dining table sat an older man in a gray suit flipping through her personal documents, her bank papers, her will, her mortgage statements. "What is going on here?" she demanded. They all jerked their heads toward her like startled intruders. Lena rushed forward, voice syrupy and desperate. "Renata, thank God you're here. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher from the law firm. We consulted about your situation." "My situation?" Renata repeated, her voice cold steel. Max stood, guilt flickering behind his panic. "Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled all the transfers, and you blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why." Mr. Fisher rose and extended a hand. "Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being." Renata ignored his hand and swept her papers off the table. "Those are private," she said sharply. "And you," she glared at Max, "have no right to them." Renata stood tall in the doorway, refusing to be cornered in her own house. "Put every paper down," she said, voice steady. Mr. Fisher raised both palms, as if calming a skittish horse. "We're only here to help." Max stepped forward, using the gentle tone he saved for getting his way. "Mom, please. Your choices lately, blocking transfers, ignoring calls, don't feel like you. We're worried." Renata watched his face, searching for the boy who once cried over scraped knees. All she found was a man calculating angles. "Worry about your own bills," she replied. "My accounts are not your business." Lena drew a breath and tried a softer angle. "Renata, you love us. You've always said we were family." Renata nodded. "I did. Family invites you to their wedding." Mr. Fisher folded his hands. "Mrs. Richter, there are legal mechanisms for moments like this. A temporary power of attorney would let Max and Lena handle essentials while you regain equilibrium." Renata laughed, a short, iron sound. "Equilibrium? You mean while I learn to be obedient again?" Max frowned. "It isn't like that." Lena chimed in. "It's just until things calm down." Renata moved to the table and picked up her will, her savings confirmations, her mortgage letters, papers Mr. Fisher had scattered. "This is my life," she said, tapping the stack. "You don't get to shuffle it like cards." Max exhaled sharply. "We have obligations, Mom. Rent. The car. The card you co-signed." His jaw tightened. "You can't just cut us off." Renata tilted her head. "Can't I? Watch me." Lena's smile thinned. "We didn't exclude you from the wedding to hurt you. It was complicated." Renata's eyes flashed. "Complicated enough to include your parents, your siblings, your photographer, your champagne, but not the woman who paid your rent." Silence widened like a crack in ice. Mr. Fisher cleared his throat. "Regardless of hurt feelings, there are concerns about capacity. Capacity to say no?" Renata asked. "Because mine is excellent." Mr. Fisher slid a folder across the table. "These forms would allow a limited guardianship, purely financial, until a physician evaluates you." Renata didn't touch it. "A physician," she repeated softly. "To diagnose what? Self-respect." Max reached for her hand. "Mom, please." Nobody wants to hurt you. She stepped back. I have been hurt. I was erased. She lifted the folder, turned, and dropped it into the kitchen bin without opening it. The soft thud sounded final. Lena's eyes flashed. You can't be serious. Renata met her gaze. I've never been more serious. Lena's voice shifted from honey to glass. We made plans based on your support. We took on responsibilities because you promised. Renata let out a slow breath. I promised love. You translated it into direct deposits. Max's temper flared. You're being unreasonable. For 3 years, she said evenly, I was reasonable on command. Mr. Fisher tried again, professional and cool. Mrs. Richter, courts look favorably on families who intervene early. Renata smiled without warmth. Courts also look unfavorably on trespass and elder financial abuse. Would you like me to call the police now or after tea? The word abuse rippled through the room. Max blinked. Abuse? From your own son? Yes, she said simply. When love demands silence and money, it isn't love. Lena crossed her arms. We never demanded. Renata nodded toward her phone on the counter. The calls today? The message. Please answer. We need to talk. That wasn't a greeting card. Mr. Fisher's gaze sharpened. Let's lower the temperature. Renata straightened. Good idea. Everyone out. She pointed to the door. Now. Max stared, stunned. We're not leaving. Renata lifted her landline receiver and began to dial. Then I'll have help. Okay, Mr. Fisher said quickly, raising a hand. We'll step outside and regroup. He turned to Max and Lena. Let's go. For today. Lena's mouth opened, then snapped shut. Max grabbed his jacket, but shot one last appeal. Mom, talk to me tomorrow. We'll fix it. We'll include you in a second ceremony. We can make new photos. Renata's eyes softened for the first time, then cooled. You can't retake respect. Lena muttered, this won't stay like this. Renata nodded. Correct. Tomorrow, your keys stop working. They left with the brittle dignity of people and used to hearing no. Renata stood in the doorway until the engines faded. Her legs trembled. She steadied herself on the frame and let the silence sit. It wasn't empty. It was clean. She walked back to the bin, retrieved the unsigned forms with 2 fingers, and slid them into a zip bag labeled evidence. On the table, she stacked her documents in careful order. Accounts, deed, will. She made a list in a neat hand. Change locks, new bank, security cameras, attorney appointment. Her phone lit up again. Max, you're making a mistake. Then Lena, you'll end up alone. Renata typed slowly, sending nothing. She placed the phone face down, opened her window, and let cold air wash the room. The scent of cinnamon thinned, replaced by something clearer. She whispered, alone is not the worst thing. Memory rose, the little boy on the swing, the promise he once was. She pressed her palm to the sill. I loved you, Max. I still do, but I will not pay for my place in your life. The words didn't shatter her. They held her up. As night fell, Renata brewed tea and sat with her list. She rehearsed tomorrow like choreography. First, locksmith at 9. Second, security system at 11. Third, open a new account at a different bank. Fourth, appointment with Mr. Weber, elder law attorney. She practiced lines out loud, calm and precise. I revoke all informal financial promises. Requests for money must be in writing. No unscheduled visits. She closed her eyes and leaned back. The house creaked, settling around her like an old friend returning. No more, she said again, and this time the walls seemed to agree. The locksmith arrived at exactly 9 the next morning, a young man with quick hands and kind eyes. Changing all the locks, Renata told him firmly. Every single door. He nodded without question. As he worked, the sharp click of old locks being removed echoed like small declarations of freedom. Renata stood by the doorway, arms folded. Family used to have keys, she said quietly. Not anymore, the locksmith asked, glancing up. No, she replied. They mistook my kindness for ownership. When he handed her the new keys, she closed her fist around them like a medal won in battle. By 11, the security company van pulled up. A woman in a Navy uniform carried in sleek white cameras and motion sensors. Perimeter and entry points, Renata instructed. No blind spots. The woman worked efficiently, drilling, wiring, syncing everything to a small keypad near the kitchen. "Anyone else have access to your home?" she asked gently. "Not anymore," Renata said. "Just me." When the last camera blinked to life, Renata exhaled. For years, she had feared being alone. Now she feared being invaded. The system beeped once, a soft electronic heartbeat that made her feel safe for the first time in years. After the technician left, Renata stood in her quiet hallway, holding the fresh security code in her hand. She typed it in, then locked the door behind her with a satisfying click. Her purse was packed and ready. Bank documents, ID, account statements, proof of transfers. She had always imagined her old age would be soft, all tea and crossword puzzles. Instead, she felt like a general marching to war. Yet there was no dread, only clarity. She tucked her keys in her bag and whispered, "Let's finish this." At the new bank across town, Renata opened an account in her name only. The young banker glanced at her ID, then at the pile of cash she withdrew from her old account. "Closing joint access?" he asked casually. "There was never joint access," she said. "Only unauthorized expectation." He blinked, unsure how to respond, and began typing. As she signed a final form, Renata felt an almost giddy calm. For 3 years her money had flowed like a river with no dam. Today, she built the dam, and the water, for once, was hers. By 2 in the afternoon, she stood outside the office of Mr. Weber, her late husband's old attorney. The brass plaque gleamed in the sun. Weber and Associates, Elder Law. She smoothed her coat, squared her shoulders, and walked in. The receptionist looked up warmly. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him it's Renata Richter," she said. "It's urgent." Within minutes, she was seated across from a silver-haired man with kind, sharp eyes. He rose to shake her hand. "Renata," he said, "it's been years. How can I help?" "They try to take my life," Renata said simply. Mr. Weber frowned. "Explain." She told him everything. The secret wedding, the financial dependence, the visit with the lawyer, the threats to declare her incompetent. She spoke without tears or pauses, as though reading a ledger. Mr. Weber listened without interrupting, then sat back with a long sigh. "What they attempted," he said, "is called elder financial abuse. It's more common than you think, and it's a federal crime." Renata's jaw tightened. "So I'm not crazy." "No," he said. "You're finally sane." He leaned forward, voice firm. "We'll build a wall around your assets. First, a sworn affidavit documenting every transfer, dates, amounts, reasons. Second, a legal notice revoking all informal financial promises. Third, an updated will that excludes them unless they meet clear conditions." Renata blinked. "Exclude them? You're not obligated to reward betrayal," he said gently. She thought of Max at 5, holding wildflowers, and of Max at 35, holding out his hand for money. Her heart cracked, but only a little. "Do it," she whispered. "Do it all." For the next 3 hours, they worked methodically. Renata signed statements, provided receipts, recounted every instance of pressure. When they tallied the numbers, Mr. Weber let out a low whistle. $33,400, he said. "In 3 years." Renata gave a humorless smile. "I financed their marriage and erased myself in the process." Mr. Weber slid the final document across the desk. "This declares that any future access to your funds requires your written, notarized consent." Renata signed slowly, each stroke like cutting a chain. Her hand trembled, not with fear, but relief. As she gathered her things, Mr. Weber touched her arm gently. "One more thing. Change your locks, if you haven't already." "Done," Renata said. "Good," he replied. "They may try again. But now, you have the law behind you." She looked him in the eye. "Let them try. This time, they'll meet a wall." He smiled faintly. "I like this version of you." So did she, though it still felt strange. For years she had been soft clay. Now she was stone. Renata stepped out of the office into the crisp evening air, clutching her folder of documents like armor. The streetlights flickered on one by one as she walked toward the bus stop. Her body was exhausted, but her mind hummed with electricity. She thought of Max and Lena coming back to her door, smiling, spinning their web of guilt and charm and finding a fortress instead of prey. She had always feared being abandoned. But tonight, she feared nothing at all. "Come if you dare," she murmured to the wind, and boarded her bus home. Renata arrived home after sunset, the street bathed in orange glow. She paused on the porch, listening. Silence. Not the tense kind, but the clean kind, like the air after a storm. She unlocked the new deadbolt and stepped inside. The house felt different. Not bigger, not brighter, just hers. She hung her coat, set her bag on the table, and turned on the lamps one by one. The warm light filled the rooms without apology. No one waiting, no one needing, just her. She exhaled, a long, slow breath that seemed to come from years ago. "Welcome back," she whispered to herself. The next morning, sunlight spilled across her bedroom floor. Renata woke before the alarm, her mind already ticking with purpose. She made tea instead of coffee, savoring the change. As she sipped, her phone buzzed, a text from Max. "Can we talk? We miss you." She stared at the words, tracing the manipulation onto the sweetness. "Mr. or Mr. Bank Account." She deleted the message unread and placed the phone face down. The tea tasted brighter without their voices in the room. By late morning, another message arrived, this time a long one from Lena. "Renata, I know things got heated. We're family. Please let's fix this. We'll make you godmother when we have our first baby. You'll be part of everything." Renata laughed softly, the sound strange in her quiet kitchen. Promises like paper crowns, pretty, worthless. She typed nothing. Instead, she stood, opened the curtains wide, and let sunlight flood the house. For years, she had lived half in shadow, afraid of losing their love. Now she saw she had never truly had it. In the afternoon, Renata opened the old chest in her guest room, the one she hadn't touched in years. Inside were photo albums, travel brochures, and postcards from places she once dreamed of visiting. Lisbon, Santorini, Kyoto. She ran her fingers over the glossy pictures. Once she had promised herself she'd go when life got calmer, when Max was settled, when there was time. She smiled faintly. Time wasn't given. It was taken. She gathered the brochures in a neat stack on her nightstand. "Soon," she whispered, and this time she meant it. That evening, the doorbell rang. Renata's stomach tightened as she checked the security monitor. Max stood outside, alone, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. His face looked drawn, older. She considered ignoring him, but curiosity won. She opened the door just enough to speak. "What do you want, Max?" He shifted on his feet. "To talk. Please." She hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. He entered like a guest, eyes darting around as if the house itself had changed. It had. So had she. They sat at opposite ends of the sofa, space yawning between them. Max rubbed his hands together. "Mom, I'm sorry." The words sounded rehearsed, but softer than before. "We shouldn't have excluded you. It was wrong." Renata tilted her head. "Why did you?" Max swallowed. "Lena thought you'd make things about you. She said it was our day, not yours." Renata's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "And you agreed." Max's shoulders slumped. "I thought we'd make it up to you later." She nodded slowly. "Later is expensive, isn't it?" Max flinched. "We're struggling, Mom. The rent, the car, everything. We counted on your help." Renata's voice stayed even. "You built your life like a bridge with no pillars, and I am done being your foundation." Max stared at his hands. "So, you're really cutting us off?" "I'm really saving myself," she said. "There's a difference." His eyes glistened, and for a moment she glimpsed the boy he had been. It hurt, but not enough to sway her. "You're adults," she said gently. "Live like it." Max rose slowly, as if carrying something heavy. "Lena won't forgive you," he said. "She says you abandoned us." Renata stood too. "I didn't abandon you. I stopped abandoning myself." He looked at her, searching for cracks. There were none. "We'll figure something out," he muttered, heading for the door. "Good," she said. "That's what grown-ups do." He paused, hand on the knob. "I'll call you," he said. "Don't," she replied softly. "Call me when you want to know me, not when you need me." He left without looking back. Renata stood alone in the doorway, heart thudding. The encounter had not shattered her as she feared. It had steadied her. She locked the door, set the alarm, and walked to the kitchen. The house felt different again, lighter, as if some invisible weight had walked out with Max. She poured herself a glass of wine, something she hadn't done in years, and toasted the silence. It tasted like victory, small, quiet victory, but hers. Later that night, curled up in her armchair, Renata opened her journal. The pages were yellowed, the ink faint. She wrote with a steady hand, "Today, I began my real life. I am 71, and it is not too late." She paused, then added, "Love does not demand silence. Family does not require payment." She closed the book gently. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but it sounded like applause. Renata smiled into the dim light. For the first time in decades, her future belonged only to her. Renata woke to birdsong instead of phone alerts. The air smelled of rain and possibility. She brewed her coffee slowly, savoring each step as if relearning how to live. On her table sat the travel brochures from the chest: Lisbon, Santorini, Kyoto, like invitations. She opened a Lisbon one first. Cobblestone streets, yellow trams, old tile houses. A city built on hills, always climbing. She traced the photos with her fingertip and whispered, "I'll climb too." For the first time in years, the thought of the future didn't feel like dread. It felt like sunrise. By noon, she was at the library, something she hadn't done in years. The librarian blinked in surprise. "Mrs. Richter, it's been forever." Renata smiled. "I had other priorities." She left with an armful of guidebooks and a notebook for planning. At a nearby cafe, she sat by the window, jotting lists, passport renewal, budget estimates, flight schedules. Around her, people laughed, clink cups lived. She had forgotten this hum of life existed outside her old routine of giving. It felt like waking from a long sleep. That evening, as golden light spilled across her kitchen, her phone buzzed again. Lena this time. The message was short. "We're moving out. Don't contact us." Renata stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. There was no anger, only a quiet finality. They weren't leaving her. They were releasing her. She whispered, "Goodbye," and meant it. Then she opened a guidebook to the Amalfi Coast and let her mind wander across the cliffs. The following week, Renata hosted her first dinner in years, but for herself. She set the table with her good china, lit candles, and played old jazz records her husband had loved. She cooked lemon chicken and roasted vegetables, humming as she moved around the kitchen. When she finally sat down, the house glowed warm and alive. She raised her glass and said aloud, "To me, the woman who forgot herself and found her again." The toast echoed softly off the walls like gentle applause. Her days began to fill with new rhythms. Morning walks in the park, long baths with lavender oil, calls with her sister Diana that weren't about sending money but about sharing laughter. She rejoined her old book club, where the women gasped and clapped when they saw her. "Renata, you look 10 years younger," one said. She smiled. "I feel 71 and brand new." The words surprised her, but they were true. She wasn't rebuilding her old life. She was building something entirely hers. One afternoon, while reading on her porch, she saw Max's name flash on her phone. She hesitated, then answered. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. "We were okay now. I got a second job." She closed her eyes briefly. "I'm glad, Max." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry," he said at last. Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "Thank you. Take care of yourself." "I will," he murmured. When the call ended, she didn't cry. She felt peaceful. Forgiveness was no longer a duty. It was a choice she could make on her own time. That night, she dreamed of herself as a young woman, standing on a hilltop with the wind whipping her hair, laughing into the sky. When she woke, the laughter lingered in her chest. She realized she had stopped waiting for their love to validate her. She had stopped auditioning for a role she already held, the lead in her own life. She stood before the mirror, smoothing her silver hair, and said, "You are enough." It wasn't dramatic. It was simply true. Weeks passed. Renata booked her first trip to Portugal in the spring. The travel agent raised her brows. "Alone?" "Yes," Renata said with a smile. "With pleasure." She left the office with her ticket in hand, humming under her breath. Outside, The world looked brighter, as if seeing her off. She remembered Max's words, "You'll end up alone." She smiled. Alone was not empty. Alone was spacious. Alone had room for dreams. On the day her passport arrived, she invited Diana over for tea. They laughed like schoolgirls as she showed her itinerary. Lisbon, then Porto, then maybe the coast, Renata said. Diana grinned. You're glowing. Renata sipped her tea. Turns out freedom is the best skincare. They burst into laughter, and for the first time in decades, Renata felt her life wasn't something slipping away. It was something opening. The night before her flight, Renata stood in her bedroom, suitcase neatly packed. She looked around the room, at the framed photo of her late husband, at the quiet walls that had once echoed with her sacrifices. She touched the suitcase handle and smiled. Max and Lena had tried to reduce her to a bank account. She had become a whole woman again instead. She switched off the light, her heart steady, and whispered, "This is my life now." And for the first time in decades, the words felt true.